Famous around the world for its collection of roller coasters, Cedar Point has seen the creation and demise of many iconic attractions. Take a journey through time to uncover the tale of these now lost rides. The 1960s was a period of expansion at Cedar Point. The new attraction for 1966 would be the Pirate Ride. This was in fact a relocated ride, having previously operated at Freedomland USA in New York. It was installed at Freedomland in 1960 and was named Buccaneers, before closing in 1964 and being moved to Cedar Point. Pirate Ride was an indoor dark ride, built and designed by Arrow Development. It was situated close to the recently added mill race, and the entrance was located next to the station for Blue Streak. Approaching the attraction, visitors would see a massive pirate ship sitting in a small pond. Behind this ship was a switchback queue line and the boarding station. Unusually for an attraction of this type, it was not a water attraction, with riders boarding small pirate ship ride cars that held 4 passengers. Visitors would progress through the show building, past scenes showing a life on the high seas. Boats passed pirates, caves, ships, and at one point entered the mouth of a sea creature. Sets and characters were detailed for the time period, but by the 1990s were looking decidedly tired. Sister attraction Earthquake had closed in 1984, leaving the Pirates as the only true dark ride at Cedar Point. Rumours began to circulate indicating closure, and it was clear that Pirate Ride did not fit with Cedar Point's vision to be a modern amusement park. Despite being a beloved family attraction, Pirate Ride last sailed at the end of the 1996 season. For a few years, the loading station was used as an arcade, with the rear of the building becoming the park's services warehouse. Remnants of the Pirate Ride can still be seen in the park today if you know where to look. Located in Frontier Town and replacing the earlier Shoot the Rapids water ride, Whitewater Landing was a log flume that opened in 1982. Construction had started in the second half of the prior year, with crews working through the winter to complete the attraction on time. Whitewater Landing was at the time the most heavily themed ride at Cedar Point, and took visitors on a wooded journey culminating in a soaking splashdown. The 4-minute ride cost the park $3.4 million to construct and could handle a massive 2,000 riders per hour. Starting in a revolving station, visitors would board one of the canoe-shaped boats featuring inline seating. Canoes sailed past the edge of a lagoon before reaching the first lift hill and being lifted skywards on a conveyor. Passing through a mine shaft, they would reach a faster section of the river before a second lift would raise them even higher. Whitewater Landing featured a pair of side-by-side drops. Canoes would alternate sides, skimming along the water at the bottom. Riders would then slowly return to the station. Whitewater Landing was a popular ride, especially in the hotter summer months, but by the early 2000s, the ride type was becoming outdated. After 24 seasons at Cedar Point, the water attraction closed for good on 30th of October 2005. Late the next year, the park announced Maverick. This multi-launch roller coaster would be constructed on the site of Whitewater Landing, reusing the former attraction's station building and queue. While waiting in line, you may be able to spot some sections of flume from Maverick's predecessor. Opening in 1983, Demon Drop was a free-fall drop ride from manufacturer Intamin. It was a first-generation drop tower and the third such ride to open. 2 similar attractions had been installed at Six Flags parks the prior year. It featured a striking green tower connected to a length of flat track. Located just inside the entrance gates, Demon Drop was one of the first rides to grab your attention as you approached the park. Opening on May 15, 1983, the drop tower was the 3rd tallest attraction at Cedar Point upon its debut. Those brave enough to ride would have a view of the intimidating tower while waiting in line. Once in the station, they would board one of the small 4-person ride cars and be secured with over-the-shoulder restraints. Cars then moved backwards out of the station. They progressed in groups of 3 and waited to enter the lift shaft. Once in the lift, it would raise similar to an elevator, reaching a height of 131 feet in 7.2 seconds. At the top, riders were greeted with a view of the front of the park and Sandusky in the distance. The car slid forward into the drop shaft, where it would pause for a few seconds. Without warning, the car would free fall down the shaft, reaching speeds of 55 miles per hour. Near the base, the track curved, levelling out and leaving passengers on their backs staring skyward. They would then enter a lower track, where they would be flipped upright and proceed backwards into the station. In its early days, Demon Drop was extremely popular, helped by its location in the park and the novel sensation it provided. The first few seasons, the attraction suffered intermittent downtime, often closed for weeks at a time, while Cedar Point and the manufacturers worked to improve reliability. As the millennium approached, Demon Drop was becoming outdated. Newer generation drop towers had been developed that took up smaller footprints and featured launches. In 1998, Cedar Point opened Power Tower, which at the time was the tallest and fastest drop ride in the world. At half the size, Demon Drop looked small in comparison. In 2005, the park listed the attraction for sale, and later announced it would close on November 1, 2009. Initially said to be going to Knott's Berry Farm, instead the dismantled ride was installed at Dorney Park. Demon Drop received a repaint and opened there in July of 2010. The ride experience remains the same and can still be ridden to this day. The plot where Demon Drop once stood initially remained empty, before being filled with a relocated Ocean Motion. Opening in 1979, Wildcat was a small travelling roller coaster built by Schwarzkopf. It was the second ride at Cedar Point to feature the name, each being a slightly different variation of the same model. Originally located on the edge of the beach close to Space Spiral, Wildcat featured blue supports and red track, with a maximum height of 50 feet. Wildcat is the only roller coaster at Cedar Point ever to be relocated. It remained in its original location until 1984, when it was relocated to make room for Avalanche Run. Its new location will be on the $1 Million Midway, across from the Western Cruise and Frontier Lift. Two attractions that would be replaced by Iron Dragon in 1985. The attraction got a new colour scheme in 2003, with Wildcat receiving bright purple track and neon green supports. Riders boarded 4 passenger cars and were secured with a seatbelt and lap bar. After leaving the station, the cars would round a right-hand curve and enter the lift hill. Once at the top, riders would negotiate many curves and small hills, featuring strong laterals and negative Gs, while reaching speeds of 40 miles per hour. Near the end of the layout, riders would be warned to brace themselves for a sudden stop. Although a family favourite, the attraction would be eclipsed by newer roller coasters installed at the park. As part of the creation of Celebration Plaza, it was announced that Wildcat would close, making it the first roller coaster removal at Cedar Point since 1978. The plot where Wildcat once stood is used for food vendors and seating, but if you look closely on the ground, you can still see evidence of where this roller coaster once sat. Originally opening in 1985, Avalanche Run was a bobsled roller coaster, one of a number of similar rides to open that decade. Its location was on the edge of the beach, with parts of the attraction extending over the sand. Avalanche Run featured an open trough, along which the roller coaster train could travel, slaloming around bends, free to take its own path. The ride reached top speeds of 40 miles per hour and lasted 2.5 minutes, but the vast majority of that was ascending the coaster's slow lift hill. The ride's modest thrills were popular with families, but the location of the ride caused maintenance problems. The position on the shores of Lake Erie led to sand from the nearby beach accumulating in the trough. The ride closing whenever this occurred, so the sediment could be swept away. For the 1990 season, Avalanche Run would be transformed, enclosed inside a massive show building and given a story-led theme. The new roller coaster would open as Disaster Transport, featuring a space theme and being indoors, removing the sandy problem that plagued the earlier incarnation. Visitors would enter the massive building, winding through a queue themed to an intergalactic transport company. Once they reached the launch area, riders would climb aboard the 10 passenger cars, sitting side by side, 2 to a row. When dispatched, trains would climb the same lift hill, this time accompanied by chaser lights, advancing away into the distance. The lights only making the leisurely ascent seem even slower. Vehicles would encounter space pirates as they began their descent, necessitating turns and evasive manoeuvres. The flight through space was accompanied by numerous props such as meteors, other spacecraft, and a satellite. Upon conclusion of the ride, a sign would proudly proclaim, "Welcome to Alaska," one of the destinations served by the fictional Dispatch Master Transport Company. The renovation of the earlier Avalanche run did little to improve the ride experience, and in the years following its transformation, numerous effects and theming were either lost, removed, or failed to be maintained. Disaster Transport would close in July 2012, with demolition being complete by the end of August. The following year, the site would be home to Gatekeeper, continuing Cedar Point's roller coaster legacy. Opening in 1965, Space Spiral was a record-breaking ride for Cedar Point. This observation tower was the first amusement park ride in the world to reach over 300 feet. At the time, a ride of these proportions was truly something unique. The 330-foot tower featured a double-decker observation cabin. 30 riders could enter each level, for a total of 60 passengers per cycle. The cabin slowly ascended the tower, rotating as it did, offering a 360-degree panorama of Cedar Point, the Lake Erie Islands, and Sandusky. It would reach a height of 285 feet before a slow descent followed. Becoming an icon on the Cedar Point skyline, its height would remain unmatched until the opening of Top Thrill Dragster in 2003. By the 2010s, the ride was beginning to show its age. It was subsequently announced the ride would close in 2012, with the last ride given at park close on August 13th. Following its closure, Space Spiral was demolished. With the help of explosives, the tower was toppled, landing on the adjacent beach. After 28 million rides and 47 years of service, the attraction was no more. The area where Space Spiral once stood was used for Wing Coaster Gatekeeper that would open in 2013. Announced in 2009 and opening in 2010, Shoot the Rapids was the most expensive water ride ever constructed at Cedar Point. Costing the park $10.5 million, it was located on Millennium Island. It was not the first attraction to be called Shoot the Rapids, and an earlier water ride operated at Cedar Point from 1967 to 1981 under the same name. Opening late on 26th of June, the new attraction received lacklustre reviews upon its debut. For its ride type, Shoot the Rapids was elaborately themed, with an underlying Western motif. Riders would sit in fiberglass boats, each holding 10 passengers, and would be secured with individual lap bars. Shoot the Rapids was a slow boat ride, with 2 drops. Leaving the station, boats would meander past rocks and through a mist-filled tunnel, before arriving at the base of the first hill. After climbing to a height of 85 feet, boats would plunge towards a pool in the first of the ride's splashdowns. Riders then passed more theming and rockwork on a slow scenic journey, eventually delivering them to the second of the attraction's lift hills. This hill was smaller than the first, but still managed to create a splashdown as the boats hit the water. After numerous operational problems and an accident on the first lift hill, the ride carried its last passengers at the end of the 2015 season. When Cedar Point opened in 2016, both of the ride's hills had already been removed. The site would become home to a relocated Sky Coaster attraction, with Shoot the Rapids' former station eventually being used as part of the short-lived Forbidden Frontier on Adventure Island. Premiering in 1991 and located in Frontier Town, Mean Street was a wooden roller coaster of immense proportions. Designed by Curtis D. Summers and constructed by the Ding Corporation, the attraction was built in only 9 months. An impressive feat for a coaster of its size. 1.7 million board feet of timber was used in its construction. Opening on May 11, 1991, Mean Streak was the 10th operating roller coaster at Cedar Point. It would also take the world record for the tallest and fastest wooden roller coaster in the world. Opening year, visitors would often have to wait 3 to 4 hours to ride, with a queue line filling up on peak days. Leaving the station, trains would negotiate a right-hand curve before starting the slow crawl up the lift hill. Reaching a maximum height of 161 feet, riders would be treated to a view over the whole park, as well as adjacent Lake Erie. After cresting the hill, trains would race down a 155-foot drop, angled at 52 degrees, and reaching a top speed of 66 miles per hour. What followed was a twisted layout of wood, the mile of track crossing over itself many times. Although a popular ride in its early years, the roller coaster did not age well. Mean Streak became an increasingly rough ride, despite track work being completed. The uncomfortable ride experience leading to little or no waits on most days. In August 2016, Cedar Point announced that Mean Streak would be retired, with the roller coaster closing on September 16th the same year. Shortly after closing, construction began on the massive structure, with sections of the ride being removed. Rumours of conversion spread, and following initial teasers, it was confirmed that Rocky Mountain Construction was transforming the attraction. Some of the wooden structure would be retained, creating a hybrid roller coaster with steel rails. Opening on May 5, 2018, Steel Vengeance was instantly praised. Itself a record breaker, the new roller coaster used Mean Streak's structure to create a heavily admired ride. Opening as the tallest and fastest roller coaster in the world, Top Thrill Dragster debuted to much fanfare on May 1, 2003. Becoming the first roller coaster to pass 400 foot, this strata coaster towered over Cedar Point, becoming an instant landmark at the park. Designed by manufacturers Intamin, Top Thrill Dragster was an accelerator coaster, using an LSM launch to propel its trains to a top speed of 120 miles an hour. Planning for the massive ride began soon after the opening of Millennium Force in 2000, with construction quietly beginning in 2002. Cedar Point was remaining deliberately tight-lipped about what it was building, but when the steel began to rise, it was clear it was going to be something extremely large. Top Thrill Dragster was officially announced on January 9, 2003, and was advertised as the 4th roller coaster at Cedar Point to hold the world's tallest record. Top Thrill Dragster was themed to Top Fuel drag racing. The launch track was constructed to resemble a drag strip, and trains emulated dragsters themselves. The 6 trains held 18 riders each, and despite the immense speed and massive height, only featured lap bar restraints. After leaving the station, trains would line up with the launch track. Following a safety announcement, motor revving would be heard as the brake fins lowered on the track ahead. Trains would then be launched, accelerating to the top speed in 3.8 seconds. Trains would then begin the 90-degree ascent, twisting to the left and cresting the 420-foot top hat. Once over the peak, riders would begin their descent, twisting 270 degrees and levelling out before being stopped by magnetic brakes. Top Thrill Dragster was a complex ride and suffered from a large amount of downtime. In its early years, it was not uncommon for the roller coaster to be closed more than it was open. Despite this, the coaster thrilled 18 million passengers during its 19 operating seasons. Following an incident in August 2021, Top Thrill Dragster was closed pending investigation. The attraction would never reopen. 2 years later, Cedar Point announced that the coaster would be reimagined by manufacturer Zamperla. The modified ride includes the addition of a new vertical spike, along with 3 launches and a new name, Top Thrill 2. On 20th of November 2001, Cedar Point announced they would open the world's tallest and fastest double impulse coaster, with construction having started in October. Wicked Twister opened in May the following year, Located close to Disaster Transport, on the edge of the beach, a location formerly occupied by the aquarium. The roller coaster was an Intamin Impulse Coaster model, an attraction type that had become popular due to its thrilling ride, intimidating design and small footprint. Featuring a simple design, Wicked Twister consisted of a station, with loading platform and LSM motors sitting between two vertical towers. As the track ascended each spike, it would twist 450 degrees. This set Wicked Twister apart from its previous installations, that only featured a twist on one of the two vertical spikes. Approaching Wicked Twister from the midway, the yellow track and teal supports would immediately grab visitors' attention. Trains could be seen racing backwards and forwards between the pair of 215-foot vertical towers. Those wanting to ride would enter the simple station and board the 32-passenger inverted train. Once restraints were checked, trains would be propelled forwards out of the station, reaching 50 miles per hour. Pulling upwards, riders would spiral up the front tower about halfway. Gravity would take over, and they would fall backwards into the station. The trains would then be boosted up to 63 miles per hour, reaching the back tower and travelling halfway up the spiral. Falling to earth again, a third launch would push the train faster towards the front tower, reaching 69 miles per hour in the process. Racing backwards once again, propelled riders reached the top speed of 72 miles per hour. Trains entered the back spike one last time, spiralling to 206 feet, the coaster's highest point. This was followed by one last pass through the station, before the brakes would engage and trains would eventually be slowed to a stop. Wicked Twister would spend 20 seasons at Cedar Point, giving more than 16 million rides during that time. It would receive some additional supports at the top of each tower in its second year, but otherwise remained largely unchanged. It was announced in August 2021 that Wicked Twister would be closed for future park improvements. It gave its last rides on September 7th that year. The area that was once home to Wicked Twister is now the location for Cedar Point's Grand Pavilion restaurant. Cedar Point's long history has seen many features come and go. From its lost water adventures to record-breaking roller coasters, each one has left its impression on the park. Still remembered, these lost rides have led to the creation of the world-class attractions we enjoy today.